Welcome to the Hihi Manga YouTube channel. Here, you can find exciting videos about the world of manga, from popular series to unique new works. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoy the videos, please leave a comment below to share your thoughts with us. Thank you for your continued support, and enjoy the videos. Luo Yu is still hesitating whether to sell Su Jiwen, while Su Jiwen is already prepared to be sold. After taking a shower, Luo Yu, with a bath towel wrapped around his waist, went to the kitchen to find Su Jiwen. Su Jiwen was warming up milk in the kitchen again. Luo Yu rubbed his nose and asked, "What's that smell?" Su Jiwen guiltily replied, "What smell? I didn't smell anything." Luo Yu walked over and took a look. There were 2 milk pans in the sink, and one of them had a blackened bottom. "Did you burn the milk?" Su Jiwen looked left and right, refusing to admit it. Luo Yu directly cornered Su Jiwen against the wall, trapping him in his arms. "What are you doing?" The next second, Luo Yu kissed him directly. "It's a burnt smell." Still trying to bluff? Su Jiwen raised his hands in surrender. "I was wrong." Luo Yu bent his finger and knocked on Su Jiwen's forehead, then went down to the wine cellar to pick a bottle of wine to bring up. "What kind of milk to drink? Adults should still drink some." The 2 clink glasses. Su Jiwen tilts his head and takes a big gulp. His alcohol tolerance isn't good, and soon his cheeks blush with 2 patches of red. His eyes foolishly fixate on Luo Yu with adoration. Luo Yu also has his vanity and naturally enjoys the adoration in Su Jiwen's eyes. He raises his glass to Su Jiwen, knowingly and teasingly. "Jiwen, would you like to follow Jiang Chi?" Sitting on the single sofa with his legs curled up, Su Jiwen looks up alertly and says no. Luo Yu softly persuades, "Why not? Didn't you accept Shen Chi's business card?" Su Jiwen shakes his head like a wave drum. "I don't want to follow Shen Chi either." Luo Yu asks why. Su Jiwen puts down his wine glass and throws himself into Luo Yu's arms, whispering in his ear, "Because I like you." His confession comes without preamble or embellishment, plainly stated for Luo Yu. Luo Yu asks what he likes about him. Su Jiwen can't explain. Boldly, he places his hand on Luo Yu's shoulder, drawing closer and closer to him. He brushed twice then moved away, his beautiful and watery eyes staring at Luo Yu, repeating again, "I like you." Luo Yu involuntarily asked, "How much do you like me?" Su Jiwen hesitated for a moment before describing, "The kind of liking where I do anything." Luo Yu pinched Su Jiwen's chin, making him look up. "What if I ask you to accompany Jiang Chi?" Su Jiwen's eyes had already turned hazy. Before Luo Yu realized it, Su Jiwen had tilted his head and fallen asleep. Luo Yu looked at him, his feelings complicated, because he found himself unexpectedly relieved that Su Jiwen had fallen asleep without answering, meaning he didn't need to hear Su Jiwen's answer. He had posed the question himself but didn't want to hear the answer. Su Jiwen curled up on the sofa asleep, obviously in an uncomfortable position. Luo Yu picked him up horizontally and carried him to the bedroom. It was the first time he had voluntarily carried someone to the room. The next morning, as soon as Luo Yu woke up, he heard a rustling sound. "Jiwen, what are you doing?" Su Jiwen, squatting by the low table, pointed at the tulips Luo Yu had bought for him yesterday and said nervously, "Mr. Luo, one of the petals seems to be crying. I'm wondering what to do." He sadly fiddled with the vase. Luo Yu walked over and rubbed his head. "Cry and I'll buy you another bunch." Su Jiwen looked up at him. "Mr. Luo, if I leave someday, can the vase still be placed here?" His question was coherent and realistic, but Luo Yu didn't like to hear it. He looked down at Su Jiwen with an expressionless face, deliberately misinterpreting his words. "So you're thinking of running off to Jiang Chi now?" Su Jiwen was so blocked he couldn't speak, pounding his head. Luo Yu pulled out the flower with the withered leaf that Su Jiwen mentioned and directly threw it into the trash bin. Su Jiwen stomped his feet in anger. "How can you just throw away someone's flower?" Luo Yu patted his head. "Got a temper now, have we?" Su Jiwen shrank his neck, with aggrieved tears welling up, daring not to speak. Unlocking the detailed steps to the boss eating little cakes. Just how popular is Su Jiwen's soft and sticky little cake? All kinds of big shots want to snatch it away. Shen Qiang, who has been coveting Su Jiwen, teases Luo Yu on the phone. "Aren't you tired of playing with Su Jiwen? I heard Jiang Chi wants to buy Su Jiwen from you for 5 million. Luo Yu scoffs, "You are well informed." Just then, Jiang Chi calls again. Luo Yu hangs up on Shen Qiang and answers the call. "What are your thoughts on Su Jiwen's matter?" Luo Yu firmly refuses without hesitation, not considering it. "If you let Su Jiwen go, I can guarantee that Zhen Ting will never touch the universe's business again." Luo Yu sneers coldly, "Zhen Ting is under Ruan Zheng's control. Who do you think you are? Let me tell you this." Zheng of course agrees. "Moreover, I can provide you with information about Al." Luo Yu is quite annoyed. "No need, Thanks. The call had just ended when Shen Qiang calls again. Luo Yu takes a few deep breaths before picking up. You hung up on me just because of Su Jiwen? Shen Qiang's roar almost deafened Luo Yu. I have something important. Shen Qi quickly said, why don't you sell Jiwen to me? Luo Yu said impatiently. Shen Qi was stunned for a moment and replied, it's not like I'm taking her back home to be my wife. Luo Yu got angry just thinking about Shen Qi always having that interest in Su Jiwen. However, he changed his mind and told Shen Qi to exchange the information about Al for Jiwen. Shen Qi was a bit surprised by his offer. Are you willing to? Luo Yu has always hated being threatened by others. He would rather rob than exchange. But this time, he seemed a bit more lenient, probably because he was tired of Su Jiwen. Luo Yu said mockingly, what's there to be unwilling about? It's not like I'm going to fall in love with him. At night, in the study, Luo Yu was reading materials when Su Jiwen knocked on the door and came in, holding a plate of small cakes. This is a cake I made myself. Try it. Luo Yu was speechless. He could even burn milk. Can the cake he made be edible? Try the freshly baked one. Under Su Jiwen's expectant eyes, Luo Yu reluctantly took a bite of the cake, then he spat it out on the paper unchanged. It was too awful. Luo Yu didn't spare Su Jiwen any face. He pushed the plate away, he got up and went to the bathroom to rinse his mouth. Su Jiwen picked up the rejected cake and tasted it. Unconvinced, he said, I think it's quite delicious. Extra mini theater. The sweet and delicious mini cakes made by Su Jiwen are the CEO's favorite. Su Jiwen wept in despair. Luo Yu ultimately delivered him to Jiang Chi. Just a second ago, he was moved by Luo Yu wanting to have dinner with him, even saying he would send him back to school, but the next second, Luo Yu cruelly told him he must stay with Jiang Chi for a while, and Jiang Chi would arrange schooling for him. Su Jiwen then immediately bowed his head. Large tears overflowed from his eyes. Luo Yu reached out to lift his face, but was rejected by Su Jiwen. Luo Yu stood up, walked in front of Su Jiwen and squatted down before him. Why are you crying? Su Jiwen shook his head, covering his face not letting Luo Yu see, but his breath was watery, lips tightly closed, tears flowing down from the gaps between his palms and face. Luo Yu slightly covered his heart, knowing he doesn't love him, yet why does watching him cry seem to make it hard to breathe? He forcefully pulled away Su Jiwen's hands. Su Jiwen cried pitifully like a child. He dared not say why he was crying, but still couldn't stop. Luo Yu determined that Su Jiwen was seeking a hug from him, so he immediately embraced him. It's okay, stop crying, it's okay. Su Jiwen hugged him back, sobbing as if he didn't care about anything else. Luo Yu felt his suit and shirt getting soaked by Su Jiwen. Eventually, Luo Yu forgot how he managed to coax Su Jiwen back home. Once home, standing at the staircase, Su Jiwen tugged at Luo Yu and asked, Mr. Luo, can I sleep upstairs tonight? Luo Yu, in a final act of kindness, took Su Jiwen's hand and led him upstairs. Come on up. That night, Luo Yu did nothing. The two lay there somewhat awkwardly, avoiding any body contact and both not sleeping well. Early the next day, Luo Yu went to the airport. The Lunar New Year was just around the corner. He was going to Europe to be with his parents. The day before, Luo Yu had instructed Xing Licheng to pick someone up from his house in the morning and take them to Jiang Chi. He had exchanged Su Jiwen for 2 clients and a piece of land. Was it because he had secretly agreed with Shen Qi to send Su Jiwen away, too proud to back down, or was it at Jiang Chi's repeated requests? No. It was none of those. I just wanted to prove that Su Jiwen meant nothing to me. He glanced down at his watch. At this time, Xing Licheng must have already taken him to Jiang Chi. He called Xing Licheng and asked a few work-related questions. After Xing Licheng answered all of them, it seemed like he knew what he was thinking and told him, I just took Mr. Su to Mr. Jiang. Luo Yu was silent for a moment. How did Su Jiwen seem? Not particularly unhappy? Luo Yu hung up the call and walked toward the boarding gate. His secretary, Lu Yi, hurriedly reminded him, Mr. Luo, that way is for economy class. We should go to the right. But Luo Yu was still pondering over Xing Licheng's words, not particularly unhappy. Su Jiwen, you've accepted it just like that? After Luo Yu sent Su Jiwen away, he kept thinking about asking them out again, then to indulge and wipe his mouth clean. Ever since the last time he visited Su Jiwen at school, the two of them had dinner together and did some things afterward. Suddenly, Luo Yu felt that whether he sent Su Jiwen away or not, he still wanted to meet up whenever he wished, taking all the advantages, considering it a profitable deal. Here his assistant thoughtfully provided Su Jiwen's current mobile number, and he dialed it straight away. Once connected, he spoke with a bossy tone, It's me. What are you doing? Su Jiwen replied softly, I'm at the library writing my thesis. What about you, Mr. Luo? Working. Luo Yu's voice was steady, but he thought, I'd only patiently answer if you were to ask about my personal matters. Just as Su Jiwen was about to say then you should be busy, Luo Yu abruptly mentioned, I'm going out of town tomorrow. Oh, Su Jiwen didn't quite understand the purpose of his words, simply responding with an oh and nothing more. Luo Yu was very dissatisfied with his response. Do you have nothing to say to me? Su Jiwen hesitated a bit. What should I say, Mr. Luo? How many days will you be away? Luo Yu replied, 3 days, 2 nights. I'll come back to find you. Su Jiwen paused for a moment and then said, all right. 3 days later, the first thing Luo Yu did upon returning was to call Su Jiwen. What time do you finish class this afternoon? I'll send someone to pick you up. On the other end, Su Jiwen's voice sounded a bit troubled. Mr. Luo, I'm afraid that's not possible. I have a curfew now. Mr. Jiang requires me to be home by 10 every night. Luo Yu was very unhappy and said firmly, then be home by 10. I've asked the chef to make your favorite dishes. Su Jiwen thought for a moment, I need to call Mr. Jiang and ask. Given Luo Yu's past temper, he would have probably hung up the phone by now with such excuses. But now, he really wanted to see Su Jiwen and believed Su Jiwen also wanted to see him. He compromised, just tell him that I will send you back exactly as you are. Let Mr. Jiang rest assured. 3 minutes later, Su Jiwen called back happily, Mr. Luo. Mr. Jiang agreed. Luo Yu sent someone to pick up Su Jiwen from school. But as soon as Su Jiwen arrived at the villa, he said he wanted to go see Abel, the dog. Without waiting for Luo Yu's agreement, he already ran to the garden with Luo Yu unhappily following behind. Just as Su Jiwen squatted down to pet Abel, Luo Yu sarcastically said, are you done? Without waiting for Su Jiwen's response, he directly grabbed Su Jiwen's hand, and walked towards the house in large strides. Don't you have to go back by 10? Time is limited, and you still have the mood to play with the dog. We've only eaten half our meal. Su Jiwen checked his phone, and it was already 9:30. He put down his chopsticks. Mr. Luo, I might have to go home. Luo Yu asked indifferently, you call Jiang Chi's house home? Su Jiwen was taken aback, he asked me to say so. Luo Yu said coldly, then go back if you want. Su Jiwen tugged at Luo Yu's sleeve, pleading softly, Mr. Luo, don't be angry. Luo Yu didn't respond, so he whispered even softer to Luo Yu, you need to be careful recently. Luo Yu's heart stirred, and Su Jiwen, looking troubled, seemed to struggle before saying, Mr. Jiang was on the phone in the study yesterday, talking about guns and drugs. I was afraid he might harm you. Luo Yu's mood instantly improved. So the little guy is still very worried about me, huh? He reassuringly cradled the little guy's face. Don't worry about these things. It's indeed late. I'll take you back. The car quickly arrived at Jiang Chi's front door. Just as Su Jiwen was about to get out of the car, he found that the door was locked. He looked at Luo Yu, puzzled, but the next second, Luo Yu suddenly leaned in, trapping him against the seat. Moving closer with ill intentions, he said, Jiwen, I should leave you with a gift, shouldn't I? When Luo Yu saw Su Jiwen again, Su Jiwen's body was covered with bruises left by Jiang Chi. His whole demeanor had become lifeless and spiritless. Luo Yu brought Su Jiwen to the door of Jiang Chi's villa. Su Jiwen intended to get out of the car, but he found that the car door was locked. Luo Yu suddenly leaned in closer, maliciously getting nearer and nearer. Jiwen, I have to leave you a gift, he said, unyieldingly. It's for him to see. Su Jiwen cried out in pain. Only then did Luo Yu let him go. Looking at the marks on his neck, Luo Yu smiled with satisfaction. Pink suits you. The two got out of the car, and Jiang Chi was already waiting at the door. Su Jiwen looked at the time. It was 10:10, already 10 minutes past curfew. He shrank behind Luo Yu in fear. What are you afraid of? Luo Yu took his hand. I'll take you to apologize to Mr. Jiang. Sorry we're late, Jiang, please understand. Luo Yu arrogantly dragged Su Jiwen in front of Jiang Chi, but his tone showed no hint of apology. Jiang Chi didn't say anything, he just looked at Su Jiwen. Su Jiwen lowered his head and followed him into the villa. Luo Yu stared at their backs in displeasure. A week later, Luo Yu visited Su Jiwen's school again. Su Jiwen hadn't answered his calls for more than a week, which was very unusual. He needed to find Su Jiwen and understand the situation in person. But when he saw Su Jiwen again, Su Jiwen had lost all his vitality. He walked past Luo Yu with blank eyes. Luo Yu cleared his throat twice. He only turned his head back, not even having time to reply, when Luo Yu grabbed his wrist. Why was his wrist so slim? And he had lost a lot of weight. Why didn't you answer my calls? What's going on? I've been sick, got a bit of a fever. Su Jiwen's voice was hoarse, his reaction sluggish. Have you seen a doctor? Su Jiwen shrank his neck, was about to go to the campus clinic for got sick. Upon hearing Jiang Chi's name, Su Jiwen's face paled imperceptibly. Just a small cold, it's fine. If there's nothing else, I'll be going first. Luoyu followed, grabbing his arm, questioning, going for an 4 alone? Su Jiwen nodded. Luoyu took his backpack, let me accompany you. Su Jiwen smiled slowly, nodding again. Su Jiwen needed 2 bags of 4 fluids. He said to Luoyu, embarrassed, it'll take over an hour. Mr. Luo, you should go first. Luoyu ignored him, pulling out a notebook from his backpack and started to read. Nice handwriting, Su Jiwen said with a forced smile, thanking him. Luoyu felt a tightness in his chest. When did Jiwen and I become so distant? An hour later, Su Jiwen finally finished the IV drip, but Jiang Chi called again. After hanging up, he told Luoyu, Mr. Jiang is waiting for me outside. Luoyu frowned inexplicably. I can at least walk you out, right? Su Jiwen didn't refuse. He silently took the backpack from Luoyu's hand. He walked dully toward the door. What happened to Jiwen today? It seemed like his vitality was drained, and he was only reacting on instinct. Jiang Chi's car was parked at the gate, the driver standing conspicuously by the door. Su Jiwen looked deeply at Luoyu and waved goodbye. Luoyu instinctively responded, goodbye, but somehow, this scene felt like a final farewell. Jiwen, he called out instinctively. Su Jiwen turned back and looked at Luoyu puzzled. Luoyu pointed at his shoes, your shoelace is untied. Just as Su Jiwen bent down to tie a shoelace, his collar slipped down. Luoyu glanced casually and saw his shoulder covered with dense, purplish bruises. A sudden sharp pain pressed against his breathing. Had Su Jiwen and Jiang Chi been together? And there were signs of rough treatment. He himself had left such marks on him before, but now it was someone else's turn. But why did he feel a sudden pain in his chest? Su Jiwen tied his shoelaces and finally turned back to smile at him. Then he walked towards Jiang Chi's car. Luoyu tried to call out Jiwen with a hoarse voice, but couldn't make any sound. Only the sound of his heartbeat seemed to burst out of his chest. It was indeed a final goodbye in a comic strip. Su Jiwen was saying goodbye to his love, and there wasn't even time to hold back. It was he himself who had delivered Su Jiwen into Jiang Chi's hands. Sing Licheng stood beside him, watching his expression, thinking his boss really fell hard this time. Half a month later, Su Jiwen had completely disappeared. He didn't go to school, his phone was out of the service area. Luoyu finally couldn't bear it anymore. Throwing his pride away, he summoned Sing Licheng to communicate with Jiang Chi, trying to negotiate Su Jiwen's return. 3 days later, Sing Licheng reported to Luo Feng with a worried expression. Jiang Chi simply ignored them. Luoyu knew Jiang Chi was posturing, but for Su Jiwen's sake, he personally called Jiang Chi. However, Jiang Chi refused to release the person and even made Luoyu listen to a live broadcast. Soon, the sound of clashing chains and a series of noises made by Su Jiwen came through the phone. In order to take back Su Jiwen, Luoyu even thought about killing Jiang Chi. Sold for 5 million, bought back for 50 million, finally the plot arrives. In front of Luoyu, Jiang Chi deliberately tortures Su Jiwen. Luoyu listens to the sound of chains clashing and Su Jiwen's series of painful noises coming from the phone. He calmly hangs up the phone, but his hands tremble as he picks up a cigarette from the table and puts it in his mouth, reaching for the lighter, but he can't seem to light it. Suddenly, he stands up furiously and smashes the lighter to the ground. With a loud bang, the lighter explodes. When he gets home at night, Luoyu absent-mindedly spins a handgun around in his hand. It's then that he receives a phone call. Mr. Luo, I'm sorry about this afternoon. You know how men are, please be understanding. Luoyu takes 2 deep breaths before responding. It's fine if you don't mind, that's the best. What do you want with me? Before Luoyu could speak, Jiang Chi added, oh, I remember now, Mr. Luo said he wanted to treat me to a meal this afternoon. Luoyu placed the gun on the table, gently pushing and rotating it with his fingertips. I wonder when Mr. Jiang would be available. Let me check my schedule with my secretary. Jiang Chi muted the call, making Luoyu wait for 5 minutes before speaking. Mr. Luo, are you still there? Luoyu, with his phone on speaker, placed it on the table and responded with a hum upon hearing Jiang Chi. Jiang Chi laughed. Mr. Luo, you've waited so long, you must be quite free lately. Indeed, it was the first time Luoyu experienced such neglect and insult. But it was also the first time he fell for someone. Seeing marks left by another on Jia Wen's body was as painful as if his heart stopped. Jiang Chi continued, I'm free next Tuesday, and then hung up. Luoyu stared blankly at his phone, wondering if this was a case of self-inflicted suffering. Meanwhile, Shen Qi finally realized that the decorative trees on his ship were removed by Luoyu's orders and planted in his own yard. Luoyu listened as Shen Qi roared on the other end, asking why his trees were removed. Suddenly, Luoyu remembered. The scene of him and Su Jiwen embracing under that palm tree. The scenery and evening light by the sea were very sweet. Only then did Luo Yu not fully consider what Su Jiwen meant by giving him the chips, which also meant giving him his true heart. Finally, it was time to negotiate with Jiang Chi. No matter what, Su Jiwen is doomed this time. He cut to the chase and asked Jiang Chi to name a price. Jiang Chi gave him a warm look and said, "Jiwen is not bad indeed, but it's a pity he's like a little wolf with wandering eyes that can't be tamed. I spent a fortune to get him under me, only to be betrayed by him in the blink of an eye." Luo Yu was taken aback and immediately guessed that Jiang Chi had planted a bug on Su Jiwen. That night at the horse farm, when Su Jiwen told him to be careful, Jiang Chi must have heard everything. Luo Yu remained silent, watching Jiang Chi quietly, waiting for him to continue. Jiang Chi looked up, took a sip of his drink, and said, "Mr. Luo, as you know, Su Jiwen has someone else in his heart, which makes him not as valuable as one might think." Before he could finish, Luo Yu couldn't hold back anymore. He stood up abruptly, drew his gun, and pointed it at Jiang Chi's forehead, asking emotionlessly, "Do you really think I wouldn't dare to touch you?" Jiang Chi raised his hands in surrender, silent, calm, and composed, staring back at Luo Yu. Luo Yu glared at him intently, his fingers almost pulling the trigger, but at the last moment, he slammed the gun down on the table. "Name your terms. Ransom? Give me 10 times the original price I paid for it." When Luo Yu said the word deal, his eyes didn't even flicker. Jiang Chi stood up, clapping his hands. "If you see Su Jiwen's condition now, you'd probably want to kill me. Just let Su Jiwen stay at my place for a couple of days, to clean up and recoup." Luo Yu was so angry he almost drew his gun again, but then, thinking of something, he nodded, "All right, I'll pay you 30% of the deposit in advance. I'll come to pick him up in 2 days." Saying this, he turned around to leave, but Mr. Luo suddenly called out to stop him. Luo Yu turned around to look at him, and Jiang Chi gave him a bow, conceding defeat. 2 days later, Luo Yu went to pick Su Jiwen up to take him home. Su Jiwen came out alone, carrying nothing, walking out from the inside quietly and alone. His expression was somewhat blank. Seeing Luo Yu, he even shivered slightly and did not smile. The fire and innocence in his eyes had already been extinguished. Luo Yu finally bought Su Jiwen back, but Su Jiwen asked him, "Do you think I'm dirty?" When Su Jiwen saw Luo Yu again, there was no smile on his face, the fire and innocence in his eyes had been extinguished. Luo Yu looked at the much thinner Su Jiwen, whose eyes were dark with bruising. There was a ring of bruises on his neck, which pained Luo Yu to see. He walked over and took Su Jiwen's hand. Su Jiwen's hand was very cold. Luo Yu forced himself to stay calm, asking as if nothing had happened, "Are you very cold?" Su Jiwen shook his head. "You're not wearing enough." Luo Yu led him to the car. "Let's go home now. I've had the cook make your favorite noodles." After we get home, Luo Yu asked him, "You look very tired. Do you want to sleep first?" Su Jiwen said, "Thank you, Mr. Luo," and then headed towards the guest room downstairs. Luo Yu clenched his teeth and pulled him back. "Where are you going?" Su Jiwen seemed to want to justify himself, but he was horizontally embraced by Luo Yu and taken upstairs to his room. Luo Yu placed him on his own bed. "Sleep peacefully." Su Jiwen nodded in front of him. Then, the thin figure covered in fading, oddly greenish traces, his neck bearing the clear marks of a chain, caught Luo Yu's eye for a moment before he looked away. He fetched Su Jiwen's pajamas, and Su Jiwen changed and lay down under the covers. Luo Yu leaned over and kissed Su Jiwen's forehead, saying solemnly, "Sleep, Jiwen." Su Jiwen looked at him, still expressionless. Luo Yu turned to leave, but Su Jiwen spoke up, softly calling out, "Luo Yu." Luo Yu turned back with a look of joy. "Do you want me to stay? Aren't you disgusted by me?" Su Jiwen looked straight at Luo Yu, his tone the same, but the question was extreme and hysterical. He asked again, "Don't you find me disgusting?" This might be the first time in Luo Yu's life that he didn't even dare to speak. After a long silence, he finally asked, "Why do you think so?" But Su Jiwen continued as if talking to himself, "I feel dirty." "If you feel dirty, just wash it off." Luo Yu simply pulled Su Jiwen up. Su Jiwen and Luo Yu's beach play extra episode is so good. The two were on vacation at the beach, and Luo Yu was sunbathing beautifully. Su Jiwen brought over a box of bright red cherries. "I specifically picked these cherries for you. Do you want to try them?" But before he finished speaking, Su Jiwen slipped and fell into the water with a splash. He struggled desperately in the water. "Mr. Luo, save me." Seeing the water cover his head, Luo Yu hadn't yet reached him, and Su Jiwen's body slowly sank. Suddenly, a figure dived into the water and held him by the waist. Seeing that Su Jiwen had already lost consciousness, Luo Yu said nothing and began to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation in the water. With the sound of splashing water, Luo Yu held him and slowly walked towards the shore. It wasn't until Luo Yu placed Su Jiwen on the shore that he coughed up some seawater and woke up, but as soon as he woke up, he met Luo Yu's intense and dangerous gaze. Su Jiwen instinctively shrank back. Luo Yi continued to behave stubbornly, pulling the person back into his embrace. Jiwen, have we ever done this in water? Su Jiwen was extremely anxious but still honestly answered, no, we haven't. Luo Yi pulled the person into the water with one swift move. Now we have. And then there followed an indescribable scene. At last, Luo Yi, fully satisfied, held the person in his arms and lifted his chin to praise, well done. Su Jiwen took the opportunity to ask, is there a reward? Luo Yi casually picked up a cherry floating on the water surface. Then he leaned in closer, this is your reward. Understanding his intention, Su Jiwen willingly went along with it. And so, a small cherry was shared between the two of them. Luo Yi extended his hand to wipe the corner of his lips. Is it tasty? Su Jiwen paused for a moment, then took out the cherry seed from his mouth to show Luo Yi.